Another big win by the Pacers. They crushed the Bulls. Thomas Bryant was awesome. Pascal Siakam, the metronome. Enrique Freeman filling in, and a good defensive night for the undefeated in 2025 Pacers. And we'll break it all down today on the Locked On Pacers podcast.
You are Locked On Pacers, your daily Indiana Pacers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What up, y'all? Happy Thursday, and welcome into another edition of the Locked On Pacers podcast, where we, of course, talk about the Indiana Pacers. As always, my name's Tony East. I cover the team for Forbes, and today we're talking Pacers Bulls, a dominant Pacers win. The game got close late, but it didn't really get close. It was only hairy for like a minute, I would say. Pacers were up as much as 34 in the second half of this game. Just about everything went right. So much to talk about with that. Thomas Bryant shining. The way the Pacers won was really impressive. Haliburton and Siakam, a limited Haliburton, and plus Siakam got it done. Enrique Freeman was quite good. Jarris Walker did some unique, fun stuff. And the defense was solid until it wasn't, as things are for the Pacers. Good win for the 4-0 in 2025, undefeated this year, 2 games over 500. Indiana Pacers. People do not think highly of the Bulls, and they shouldn't. The Bulls are now 17-20. The Bulls entered this game not on a back-to-back. Winners of 4 of 5. They just beat the Spurs, the Knicks, and the Bucks within the last 10 days. They're not a joke, and the Pacers ran them over for 48 minutes. And I think the reason I felt good about the Pacers' chances was how much they dominated the paint. They scored 76 points in the paint in this game. That ties their season high. They also had 76 points in the paint in Dallas. They had, I believe, 20 after the first quarter of this game. They were absolutely destroying the Bulls at the basket. The Pacers shot awful from 3 in the first quarter. They were 1 for 8 from deep. And a lot went their way. Still, the Bulls had a bunch of turnovers and were 1 for 7 for deep themselves. But the Pacers went 1 for 8 from 3, but 12 for 17 on 2s plus 3 foul shots. That's because they were cruising at the rim. First quarter, Ben Mathurin did not miss a 2-point shot. Pascal Siakam did not miss a 2-point shot. Thomas Bryant did not miss a 2-point shot. The only guys of the starters who missed a 2 in the first quarter were 1 from Nembhard and 3 from Haliburton. And then TJ McConnell missed 1, 2. Every other shot the bench took was a made 2. Awesome work in the paint in the first quarter for the Pacers. And so even though it felt not like the Bulls could come back, but I think they had it, 10-ish after the first quarter, I thought, the Pacers are going to win. It was that obvious that early, because if you can get to the rim that easily, you're going to score a bunch of points, because the reaction to not being able to defend the rim as a defensive team is send someone else to the paint or to defend the rim. And the Pacers this year, outside of a game in Brooklyn where they still won because they found other ways, have been awesome at okay, we'll just hit the 3-point shooter over there and get the shots we like from 3. Tyrese Haliburton said the Pacers have been getting up more effective threes because they've been getting better rim pressure, right? And the Bulls were not willing or were unable or didn't, for whatever reason, ever make that adjustment. They never cut that off. The Pacers only took 29 threes in this game, and it was a good low-volume shooting game because of how easy it was for them to consistently get to the rim. And that continued all night. They almost averaged 20 points in the paint per quarter. Again, 76 against Dallas. They had 70 against the Knicks in New York when they couldn't make a 3 to save their lives. They had 66 in that win in Boston, right? Their record when they have, let's use 54. When they have 54 or more points in the paint, they only have 4 losses. And I am trying to count very quickly. This looks like 11 wins, right? Obviously, scoring lots of points, which is what points in the paint really is, means you have a good chance to win. That means you're scoring a lot. But specifically, this does signal that a lot of points in the paint goes a long way. If they're over 54, they only have 3 losses this year. And those 3 are a Houston team that's awesome on defense, a Milwaukee team that was awesome for one night when the Pacers weren't playing well, and a Knicks team that watched the Pacers shoot historically bad from 3. The Pacers kept it up all night with the rim pressure, and I actually wondered if they would be able to, only because of this. Rick Carlisle mentioned this before the game. He said the Bulls are really good, and I think he called it after scoring or after baskets. What he meant by that, as he clarified post-game, is the Bulls they play very up-tempo, one of the fastest teams in the league. they get into their offense really fast, and they draw a lot of fouls really early in the shot clock. And so what they'll do is, okay, yeah, their defense stinks, right? No doubt about it. 24th in the league, the Bulls are in defensive rating this year. But they will immediately, if you score at the rim on them, which lots of teams do, get the rebound, turn, and push while the player who hit the layup is still under the basket. And that's how they fly up the floor. They have an above-average offense, and they're third in pace right now, right? And like the Pacers just took advantage of the Suns on this. Every time Bradley Beal or Devin Booker hit a layup and fall down, the Pacers would rebound, go, or take it out of the rim or net and go. And the Bulls love to do that. Best in the league at it, or one of the best in the league. That's how they try to use the clock to their advantage. So scoring at the rim against them or taking a lot of shots there, you have to fly back on defense, right? That's a very hard thing to do because that means you just flew to the rim or drove, and then you're sprinting back. The Pacers did an awesome job of that. That's what made this different than a lot of Bulls games. Is most Bulls games, if the Pacers give you that too, they just come score really quick. That's why, I mentioned their recent wins. When they beat the Knicks, the final score of that game was 139-126, right? They put up a ton of points in these games. And so that's what I think was going to be the hard part of this, but it never stopped. And a ton of credit to the Pacers because this wasn't a one-player thing. That's why when I asked the questions after the game, for those of you who watch the press conferences, I asked Rick Carlisle and a couple players, what kind of emphasis went into that? Because sometimes rim pressure just happens because the other team stinks at defense. It felt like it was so intentional when it was everybody. Their three-point attempts being so low. Tyrese Haliburton took 10 twos. I talked about how rare that was in that Boston game when he did very well from there. He took 10 twos on his way to 16 points and 13 assists. Andrew Nembhard took 8 twos. Thomas Bryant took 12 twos. Boy, oh boy, do we have a lot to talk about with Thomas Bryant, by the way. Holy cow. Pascal Siakam actually led the Pacers in threes by a lot, but he took 10 twos. Then Mathurin took 8 twos. I mean, this was such an impressive reason to take more twos than normal. Enrique Freeman and TJ McConnell only took twos. Ben Shepherd took more twos than threes. What? It was unbelievable how easy it was for the Pacers all night long to do that. And so that's what made me realize, even as the Bulls were chipping at this and the Pacers had this embarrassing stretch from late third to mid fourth, I would say like 5 to 6 minutes of play where their lead got chipped down from 34 to 14, where it was like, oh man, maybe they'll blow a big lead again. The starters came back in and just instantly, Jarris Walker layup, Pascal Siakam and one, and I forget who the third player was. But they hit 3 layups in 3 possessions. They're back up 21 because of the free throws as well, and the game was over. That was dominant. Points at the paint kind of stuff. And you know what else that led to? Exactly what Haliburton talked about, but in a different way. The passing, setting up other players, right? When he talked about how their offense has been better and the ball's been moving and the connectivity is there a couple weeks ago, he talked about how it leads to assists and better opportunities for his teammates. 37 assists for the Pacers in this game, among their best marks of the season. And usually a high assist game is like a good jump shooting night. You're kicking out shooters, you're moving around the perimeter, shots are going in. And again, they only took 29 threes. They just had a plan to carve up the Bulls with cuts, with pick and rolls, with whatever action they could get from a drive and kick out or a drive and a cut. And it did. It absolutely shredded the Bulls. 37 assists, by the way, is a season high. They still only have one loss when they are over 30 assists in a game. That New Orleans loss in New Orleans is so goofy, even if Zion and Ingram played. So much went right for the Pacers in this game offensively. They could have got to 130 if they didn't clear the bench or if they didn't forget how to play for 6 minutes in the second half. But the reason they were able to play that well and keep the Bulls away the whole game, despite the Bulls every game, it seems, having a late surge on offense, is because they dominated the paint in a way that is really hard to do in an NBA game. There's a reason the Pacers only have 3 games this season with 70-plus points in the paint. It's hard to do. If teams could get to 70 points in the paint every night, they would. That's like the best possible offense you can have, as the Pacers showed in this game. And it was every single player who played making it happen. And the Bulls defense kind of invites such things. Nice win for the Pacers. They keep climbing 2 games over 500 now for the first time this season. Not a big celebrating moment for a team that has quite a bit of aspirations, but for a team that was at one point 10-15 and had very recent pathetic losses to the Nets and Hornets, they'll take this. They're back in 6th, half a game out of 5th. We'll keep tracking other results, but there is a big jumble of teams right behind them. But they're distancing themselves from the Bulls actually matters, right? The Bulls are 10th right now, and the Pacers at worst now will finish even with them in the tiebreaker, 1 win away from securing it. There's a real chance the Bulls are 10 right? If the Pacers end up faltering again, this could matter. For play-in purposes, this could matter for all sorts of stuff. And the Pacers got it done with their points to paint. Some big individual performers I want to talk about today. Thomas Bryant, Enrique Freeman, Jarris Walker, Tyrese Haliburton among them. Before we get to any of that, though, I need to talk to you guys about two wonderful groups of people. First up, the good people over at Game Time. I love going to live events. Just was that one. Sports, music, theater, or comedy, whatever your favorite is. You probably have memories of attending a concert or sporting event you love. The energy and excitement is unforgettable. And now, Game Time has made it even easier to get tickets for your favorite events with their new feature, Game Time Picks. This feature filters out the fluff to only show you incredible deals on great seats. You don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Recently, for example, you could pop in, see all these Pacers games, play the Warriors, hot ticket, coming up on Friday. Game Time Picks will make it super easy. On the Game Time app, you can find amazing deals. See the seat view in Gamebridge before you buy. The super deal is very impressive. Great seats at unbeatable prices. Plus, the app's all-in pricing shows the total cost up front. No surprise fees at checkout like other places. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKDOWNNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, and you redeem the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. We also need to very quickly talk about Rocket RX. Today's episode is brought to you by Rocket RX. If you're ready to boost your confidence and take control of the bedroom, Rocket RX has the solution. Imagine feeling more prepared and performing your best. Rocket RX makes it simple and stress-free. Rocket RX offers FDA-approved treatments for erectile dysfunction at lower costs than branded alternatives. No more uncomfortable doctor visits or pharmacy trips. Everything is delivered straight to your door in discreet, plain packaging. With Rocket RX, you'll get trusted care from a real U.S. clinical team. Complete a quick 100% online consultation, and you could get your free prescription today. Visit rocketrx.com to get started now. It only takes 2 minutes. Right now, our listeners can get 40% off your first order when you use the code LOCKDOWNNBA. That's Rocket RX, code LOCKDOWNNBA for 40% off your first order. Terms and conditions apply. Rocket RX, better sex made simple. Back here on Locked On Pacers. Thanks for making us our first listen today and every single day. Make your second listen Locked On Bulls. I'm sure Hayes will have a lot to say about whatever that Bulls defensive effort was. They don't have very many good ones, but that one was particularly bad when paired with their poor offense. Although, some bright spots for the Bulls. How about ex-Pacer Chris Duarte hooping? One of his better games I've seen from him this year. Jalen Smith was quite good. Another ex-Pacer having a pretty good night, while some normally good Bulls did not really have good nights. Got to catch up with Chris Duarte before the game. Was quite fun. I very rarely, if ever, share any moments from private conversations with players, but he did ask me how the podcast was going. So, Chris, if you're listening, it's going very well, and it's fun to watch you play again in Gamebridge Fieldhouse. Let's keep talking Pacers Bulls. The biggest player story to me was very obvious. It was Thomas Bryant. Jay Rigdon and I just talked about him yesterday. We got very lucky with that player-specific timing because, as it would turn out one day later, Myles Turner got sick today, non-COVID illness. He couldn't play. And they found out, well, I found out because the 12:30 injury report came out today, and the 11:30 injury report, Myles Turner wasn't on it, and the 12:30 injury report had Turner as questionable. And I was at the Mad Ants game as this comes out, and I look at the Mad Ants bench, and there's Enrique Freeman. Why isn't he playing? He did not play for the Mad Ants. Then, before the game, Myles Turner's warm-up time is here, and Enrique Freeman's warming up. So Myles Turner doesn't play. That's way too much context that it was clear all day that he wasn't going to. The reason I did all that lead-up is that made it possible, at least for the Pacers. They found out early enough that in their walkthrough in the morning, or their shoot-around session, whatever you want to call it, Thomas Bryant knew or found out then he'd be starting. You know, he was told that Myles is playing, you're starting. So he got to work with the starters then and kind of figure out what's different there, what his role is going to look like, and all that kind of stuff. And he was awesome in his first start for the Pacers. His best game with the team, and obviously the stats are going to show that because they're high. You know, he played a lot of minutes, right? He played almost 28 minutes in this game. His previous high with the Pacers wasn't even close to this. This was his best scoring game since March 29th, 2024, though, you know, since late last season. But don't get caught up in just the numbers. Like, the way he played is what made this his best game for the Pacers. He only had one double-digit performance, and it was that blowout loss in Boston where he could play a lot. What made this the best is how he fit in with that group. A full new unit that he had never – I mean, he's played with some starters before, but never being the fifth starter. I mean, I just did a segment not very long ago about look how good the starting five has been. and it got majorly disrupted. Turner's shooting has been awesome this year, and his defense has ticked up the last couple weeks. The whole team's has. He fits very well. And you just never know what it's going to take when you ask a different player into that to come in and work in that system. And what stood out to me very early, non-minutes or production-wise for Bryant, was how quickly he would make the decision of what to do when he caught the ball. And I don't even mean that as like drive or shoot or pass or whatever generic thing you want to use about the decision he can make. What I mean is what they ask Myles Turner to do a lot is be that fulcrum, right? Like the guard, whoever's handling the ball, be on one side, and he'll go through an action. And then if nothing opens, they throw it to Turner at the top of the key. And then Turner has to decide if he's going to shoot the open three or flip it to the other side to the other guard and then go screen for that guy, or give it back to the first guy and screen that guy. And like, he's done it so much that he always is making the right choice or keeping the ball moving or making good decisions. It's like a very understated part of Turner's improvement. I mean, has Thomas Bryant ever been asked to do that with this Pacers team? Like the bench and playing with TJ McConnell is just like a different experience for the center. So I had no idea how this was going to look for him. And he did a really good job. And unprompted, not really unprompted, we were asking him questions, but like sort of unprompted, I thought that's what he said post-game was a big part of what he played well. He said, quote, I wanted to try to get and keep the offense fluid. Right? He wanted to keep the defense moving and get open shots to the Pacers. He said that's the most important thing. And I think that's spot on. We will, in very short amount of time, talk about his actual production and stats. But the fact that he was able to do those kind of things, okay, Haliburton and Siakam didn't generate anything. Here, Thomas Bryant, you figure it out. And it's not figure it out like make a play. It's just, do you give it back to Haliburton and screen for him? Does he turn around and give it to Mathurin or Nembhard or whoever? And he would just very quickly and calmly would pitch it to Mathurin and then set a screen and then dive to the corner or set that screen and pop into space. Like he kept making the right choice. Vucevic did not have any answers for it. And I really liked that part of Thomas Bryant's game tonight. Of course, a Hoosier is going to look like that. I kid. He was great, right? I keep talking about this. Every game, it feels like he has a forceful rebound or two. We're just like, oh my gosh, he just wanted it more. He had a lot of those in this game. 5 offensive rebounds for Thomas Bryant of his 8. And he was great. 16 shot attempts, the second most of any Pacer. And that was totally fine. They were good shots. They were right at the rim or threes most of the time. I think the only one that wasn't either right at the rim or a 3, I'll check his shot chart right now, was his very first shot, which was like a right wing bank shot. Yes, that's exactly right. He made like a 15-footer on the right wing. He banked it in. Every other shot he took was either a 3 or right at the rim, right? Awesome game from him in terms of getting the right shots up. So what did he actually do when he made his decisions, being fluid and keeping the ball moving? 22 points, the second highest of any Pacer. Again, the last time he scored 20 points was with the Heat. He had never even cracked more than 12 points for the Pacers. 8 rebounds, tying his Pacers high, actually setting, his Pacers high. That's obviously a minutes thing, but his points per minute was very good in this game. 1 assist, 2 steals, no turnovers. So he did a very good job with the game plan on Vucevic. When Vucevic would screen versus guard screens, the Pacers had different coverages. They really changed up how they were defending without Turner there. And you saw the cracks of that in the second half, but in the first half, they did a really good job with it. But he did a really good job locking in on that game plan. He fought on the glass. He's super energetic, which is contagious when you're winning in the game, right? Tyrese Haliburton talked about that a little bit post-game. So it's hard not to be super impressed with what Thomas Bryant did when he was asked to start. Like the Pacers scheme is unique, and he found a way to fit in right away and play with pace and figure out when to roll and when not to roll and figure out when to pitch it to the other side, when to give it back. I was super impressed by what he did. And the Pacers, maybe they win without him. They dominated this game, but they certainly don't win by a lot without him, right? They would have had to figure something else out. We saw what happened last time they didn't have Myles Turner. They went to Toronto. They didn't have Moses Brown yet, and they lost. And the first time they didn't have Myles Turner, they played the Celtics at home, and they snuck out an overtime win. They played pretty well that game, but they had Isaiah Jackson then. So really impressive from Thomas Bryant, and really good work by the Pacers to very quickly in one day integrate him into the starting 5, tell him what he needs to do, and have him feel comfortable enough to play fluid and play well in a win. And it wasn't just that. Okay, great. Congrats to Thomas Bryant. You're starting. You're playing well. Well, guess what? Now his spot is gone, and the Bulls are kind of large. They play Vooch. He's large. They play Jalen Smith. Everybody in the Ambridge Fieldhouse knows about Jalen Smith, what he can do. And they have some forwards who are good on the glass. Pacers can't go small against that, right? I mean, Toppin can stretch out Jalen Smith, I guess, but that's a tricky one to go for. So Enrique Freeman, it's his time to be the third big. He was awesome for the Mad Ants Tuesday, but he was the only Pacer, well, sort of, playing in the rotation that was playing a back-to-back. He played Tuesday for the Mad Ants with 27 points. And Enrique Freeman also stepped up, right? Some good screens and finishes. He took 4 free throws in this game, the most of any Pacers bench player, and 1 off of Nembhard on leading the team. 6 points, 4 boards for Freeman, 1 assist. He did have a turnover, but 2 for 3 from the field. I thought he did totally fine tonight. I think this is one of his best games as a pro. Obviously, Jalen Smith is very good, as the Pacers know, and he did lose that matchup in some ways, but he's given up a lot of height, and I thought Freeman did fine. He fit in well with the second unit. They didn't have to play Toppin at the 5, and that's what matters, is that they can build a rotation that works against a tricky team. Freeman is, I think Freeman's something. I don't know what it is, and maybe it's just the third big because of his size. He's a rookie. I'm not putting a ceiling on it yet. I don't want to put a ceiling on anybody, but he's a backup 5 who won't be the story from this game and shouldn't be, but I thought he played pretty well, and he did not disrupt bench units and looked really good. A couple more things I want to get to from this game. Tyrese Haliburton fighting through pain for a good night. Siakam had 26 points, and I've barely even talked about him, and so much more from the Pacers' 20th win of the season. Before we get to any of that, though, we need to talk about Ultimate College Basketball HC. I want to take a moment to introduce you to a brand new mobile game that a lot of people are excited about. It's called Ultimate College Basketball HC. If you've ever dreamed of being a college basketball head coach, this is your chance to step into those shoes, because in Ultimate College Basketball HC, you control every detail of your program, from recruiting players and hiring a coaching staff to overseeing training camps, handling NIL deals, and managing scholarships. It's all in your hands. When it comes to game time, you get to draw up offensive plays and set your strategy. That way, the way you play, won't just affect the current season. It will shape the future of your school's basketball program. It's a game that lets you feel the full weight of what it means to be a head coach and lead your team to glory. Here's a special offer for Locked On Pacers and Locked On NBA listeners. Use the promo code LOCKEDONCBB, all caps, inside the game store. You'll get a free boost for your program. It's a perfect way to kickstart your coaching career. To download the Ultimate College Basketball HC app, just visit ultimate-cbb.com or look it up in whatever app store you're using. Ultimate College Basketball HC. Begin your coaching legacy today. We are back here on Locked On Pacers. Thanks for making us your first listen today and every single day. Make your second listen Locked On Heat, because Jimmy Butler and they got a fin win the other night. Or I would say the game, maybe the year of the NBA. Thunder Cavs, tremendous game. 230 win teams that have only played like 36 games entering. They're both awesome. Cavs are legit, man. Pacers are about to face them twice. I talked to Danny Cunningham of Locked On Cavs earlier this week. They look great, and then they won the game. I mean, breaking that Thunder team's win streak, surviving the second half Thunder defense. How many All-Stars will the Cavs have? I don't think it's crazy to say they could have 3. And they have 4 guys who have legitimately decent candidacies. They're a really, really, really good team. So Locked On Cavs would be my recommendation here for a second listen, but Locked On Thunder as well. Ryland does a great job covering that team. I've only talked about Thomas Bryant, Enrique Freeman, and how the Pacers played. One more note on how the Pacers played. After getting away from it in Brooklyn against a just god-awful group that was really injured that they could beat without doing this, Pacers got right back on the dominate the possession battle train today. 8 turnovers for the Pacers, 18 for the Bulls. So there's plus 10 for the Pacers. 15 offensive rebounds for the Pacers, 9 for the Bulls. There's plus 6 for the Pacers. That's 16 more chances. The Pacers took 14 more shots and 5 more free throws. You get so much margin for error when that happens. I talk about this all the time. The Bulls shot 51.2%, only 0.8% worse than the Pacers. The Bulls shot 34.3% from 3. That's 0.2% worse than the Pacers. They were better accuracy-wise from the foul line. And they got smoked. They were down 30 in the second half because they kept turning it over. And Thomas Bryant and Ben Shepherd and Ben Mathurin and Pascal Siakam cleaned up offensive boards when they would miss at the rim, where they were getting all the time because of the paint pressure the Pacers had. That possession battle's been a huge thing for the Pacers these last couple of weeks, really this year when the calendar flipped as well. And the Bulls, the newest victim of that, as the Pacers really took advantage there. Siakam was awesome. Speaking of him, 17 shot attempts. He got consistent reps all game long, 26 points. I wondered if this would be his first 30-point game of the season. He had 16 at halftime, 6 rebounds and 3 assists. The Bulls had no answer for him. I mean, Patrick Williams guarded him to start the game. Patrick Williams was awful in this game. 0 for 5, very little resistance on defense, 2 turnovers, 0 assists. He did not play well, and so he didn't play that much. He played the fewest minutes of any Bulls starter, and they're back up fours were like Dalen Terry or Buzelis or Duarte or Horton Tucker, whoever you want to say, all guys who were too short, right? So they had one guy of the right size who played terrible, and a lot of guys who had some missing quality that does not make defending Pascal Siakam consistently possible for them. And Siakam ate that up. He punished. He would get down low on the switches, and when the Bulls would panic, great, swing, bucket for someone else on the Pacers, who only had to play 2 players over 30 minutes in this game. One of them was Tyrese Haliburton, who early, I think everybody saw it, a little worried, hobbling a bit. He was questionable with that ankle thing. We talked about it yesterday. He did push through it. He said after, with the way the team's playing, like he wasn't 100%, but he wanted to play. Noble of him to do. 7 of 13, 2 for 3 on threes. Very rare stat line of those shot attempt splits for him. 13 assists, 1 turnover, 2 steals. His defense, people keep laughing at this, but his defense has been legitimately better of late. I thought he played pretty well after an first quarter where he kind of was not limping around, but just clearly not like that game that Obi Toppin hurt his ankle and he was running on his toes. It wasn't quite that weird, but you could tell his movement was weird. Second half, Haliburton, when he was settled in, was much better. 11 points and 7 assists in the second half for Haliburton on 5 for 7 from the field. A lot of that coming in an awesome third quarter. Yes, 11 points, 5 assists in just the third quarter for Haliburton. So the stars were the stars, right? That's what the Pacers need. Zach LaVine was excellent too, but he missed a bunch of threes and had some turnover issues, and his defense wasn't great. And the Pacers stars were very consistent all night. That's, early in the season, I talked about it all the time, how very infrequently the Pacers had the best player on the floor. That has totally flipped of late. Haliburton has been sometimes, Siakam has been sometimes, and they're winning as a result. Andrew Nembhard did a good job on LaVine for a lot of the games. Zach LaVine did get going in the second half, to his credit. He's been unbelievable. I think he set some record. Maybe it was a personal record, maybe some Bulls thing about the number of 30-point games in a row he's having. He did play very well in the second half, but early, Nembhard was doing a good job of limiting him. Nembhard 5 for 11, 5 assists, 2 turnovers in this game. Off the bench, Obi Toppin, another nice night with his 12 points. I thought Jarris Walker was really good. Jarris Walker has kind of added more to his ball handling repertoire, as everybody's kind of seen these last couple weeks, but really unique plays he had to make in this one. He was 5 for 7, got going inside the arc with 3 assists. He had 12 points, another double-digit scoring game for him. I believe his 6th since mid-December, and it happened in the second quarter. Enrique Freeman, Jarris Walker pick and roll with Walker as the ball handler. Who would have ever thought that combo would happen in like a real game during the rotational part of the game this season? And it worked. Walker kept a guy on his hip and kept getting closer and closer and closer. Then up goes the shot and he made it. It was a really, really nice, well-executed pick and roll. It was really tight spacing on that because there's no shooting between those two in that environment. Walker can shoot, but not really off the dribble like that just yet. That was a really, really interesting play to see Jarris kind of push through that. Ben Shepherd was good. Ben Shepherd had 7 boards, which was the second most on the Pacers. Ben Shepherd had my favorite basket of the game, and the moment I knew the Bulls were, let's say, disengaged a little bit, the Bulls scored, and Ben Shepherd catches it on the right wing like 40 feet from the basket, and no one was guarding him. And so he dribbled to the three-point line, and then he dribbled to the elbow, and Lonzo Ball faked like he was going to go guard him, leaned towards him and took a step, and then just got away and got out of the way, and Ben Shepherd just dribbled again and hit a layup, and nobody guarded him. It wasn't even one of those goofy ones where you can tell somebody messed up, where a team scores and then the other team just throws it length the floor for a transition basket. Just nobody wanted to stand in front of Ben Shepherd as he went to the rim for an easy basket. It was super goofy, but a well-deserved play. And another instance of the Pacers getting to the rim and having an easy time doing it. TJ McConnell, the only Pacers player to shoot under 40% in this game. He's on quite the down stretch of finishing plays. I might dive into that in a not so distant podcast, but a good Pacers win. 20-18 is a totally fine record and getting very close. They're not quite there, but I did do my early season schedule predictions. They're getting very close to being on pace for what I said. This was I have to update it. I haven't done it yet. I had them right now at 22-16. And they're 20-18, actually. They're only 2 games behind that, and I had them at 49 wins this season. If they can steal a win or two that was unexpected, for example, I had them losing both in Paris. If they win one of those, this could be a thing. And their schedule coming up is manageable, but a little tough. Golden State, they beat Cleveland twice. Maybe they lose both of those. Then Detroit, Philly, and the 2 San Antonio games before another not difficult but not easy stretch leading up to the All-Star break of Detroit, Atlanta, at Utah, at Portland, both LA teams. The Knicks are good, and then at Wizards. They could keep climbing here. Now, I said the opposite in late December. I said they could have quite a bad record by then. They turn things around. So they've got to just be consistent. It doesn't matter what I say, and it doesn't matter who their opponent is on paper. But the way they got through the tough stretch of December, I think has warranted some optimism about what their record could be. And today they cleaned up against a team that they should beat on paper. That is now the third time this year that they've really done that. So credit to the Pacers. They're playing good. They've got the Warriors Friday. I am traveling out of the state very early Thursday. So Thursday's podcast will be one segment of me talking about something and then a bunch of interviews with players after Mad Ants games. But they're Pacers players. Johnny Furphy, Enrique Freeman, and new two-way player Ray J. Dennis. So I think that will be pretty cool. I've never done a podcast like that. I hope you guys like it. If not, I might not ever do it again. And then I will do something after the Warriors game, but probably not till like the middle of Saturday. We'll see. I won't be able to watch it with everybody else, but promise you'll get a post-game podcast after that game. Thank you all for listening. Have a wonderful day. You can find me on Twitter at Tony R. East, and this podcast is there at Locked On Pacers. I'm on Blue Sky at Tony R. East as well. We will see you tomorrow.